G'day, it is the coach here, and I hope you're all kicking ass, taking names, and generating depravity for the sexiest god in the mortal realms. It is Slaanesh. I am talking. Actually, I was going to say you are the sexiest god because the Texas crew. I've been talking to Texas now. It seems like it's Texas featuring AOS Coach at this point. You are three of the Texans recently, and the beard game has really evolved. So I think this is fitting. We've got the sexiest, excessive, amazingest content with the best beards.
Hey, you're gonna make me blush here already.
But I'm here with Evan Miller, and you might know Evan because everyone's trying to work out how on earth Evan went 4-1 with Slaanesh. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk Slaanesh. We're going to talk about how they are tracking in 3rd edition. This is not specific about that one particular list. And we'll go through the list. We'll go through that Warhammer Open list where you went 4-1. But it's more about what have you learned so far in the last 2 months of Slaanesh? What's working for you? What are you struggling with? You know, what are some things you should consider as the kind of the tournament scene evolves and the meta kind of settles, and just generally, what are you picking up along the way? And before I get into the topic, I guess I'll let you introduce yourself. Do you want to know a little bit about who you are and more importantly, why you are amazing?
Well, I mean, why I'm amazing, I think it's just genes, right? I'm just born with it, got favor from the chaos gods. And then really, so my name's Evan Miller, and I'm a Texas boy, and we ended up just kind of falling into it. We actually played Total War, my brother and I, and then we were like, hey, they actually make a board game. So we got into it, and we got super lucky, and Texas is probably one of the largest. I mean, I haven't seen anyone else yet. I'm sure it's down under. It's probably pretty big, but in some states it's completely sparse. And then in Texas, I mean, we got our tournament at least 80, 90 people going. We got one for Houston, 90 people. The one in Austin, that's the US Open, sold out within 5 minutes. 128 people.
You got a Hammerfest as well coming up,
Yeah,
which
Hammerfest
is like 70, 80 people. So
Yep.
you guys are on fire.
Yeah, we have our own Texas circuit where we're all scoring each other, and then we rank each other into the top 20, and then we see who the top one is out of that. It's crazy how competitive for Age of Sigmar we are.
No, it's neat. It's really good. You all have a really cool scene. I've been fortunate to at least go visit the Citadel and kind of watching you all from afar. But Slaanesh, I'm living in a world where I have been in lockdown now for 10 weeks. So as of time recording, I have just finished my 10th week of hard lockdown. I feel like I'm in prison. Yeah, look, I haven't played real life Sigmar since 2nd edition. So I've literally been locked down. Luckily, I've had Tabletop Simulator to kind of help me keep entertained, but I can't even play at a game store. Like literally everything's closed. So I've been living vicariously through not only just Tabletop Simulator, but Best Coast Pairings, Tabletop TO. Like I'm just watching the scene. And as I was tracking the Warhammer Open, and I think at the same time Summer Slaughter was on, I saw your list kind of like progressing, and then it ended. I think it was 4th. You ended 4th, I think, at the GT.
Best in faction for Chaos. Yeah.
Best in faction, 4-1 with Slaanesh. And I remember looking at this initially going, everyone's written Slaanesh off. People don't like Slaanesh. One, the points were aggressive when it got a 2nd edition update in February, and then the points increased in 3rd edition, and people just wrote you off. And I'm like, how on earth is this bloke doing well? And then I've looked at the list, and I'm like, and I was talking to a few Slaanesh players. Vince Ventrell is one of them, and I'm like, this is a list. Like, I don't understand how he went 4-1 with this list. And Vince is like, no, neither did I. Like, we just couldn't work it out, which obviously led to the meme. It's like, how on earth did you go 4-1? And I might let you give us the high level, like what you experienced, and just generally a little bit about your performance so far.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as playing Slaanesh, I've only been doing it for the better half of this year. So it's still a somewhat new army. Once the Mortals came out, that's really when I got into them. They are very they have a lot of finesse into what they do. I think a lot of people they want to play their army a lot like a destruction faction. I move it up the board, I slap into something, and if I roll good, then I beat that opponent. And Slaanesh is not like that. And so there were it took me a lot of games. I've probably played well over 40 games in preparation for this and just trying out different lists with what I had. And it's really tough to get it. And even still, like I would say that there's some lists that I go up against that I just don't have a chance against. It really came down to me in this. I have a buddy Gavin. He was on here show last week, and he told me the secret to playing a lot of people is knowing their army better than they do, or at least on the same level. And so that really helped where most people I play against don't really know how Slaanesh works because there's a lot of tools in their kit, especially with the units, because most people aren't playing Slaanesh competitively. So when they go up against someone who is trying to do it, they're either rusty and they haven't played them recently, or they haven't played them since they got updated. And so when they fought me, 4 out of the 5 players at my match, at the tournament, I should say, didn't play or hadn't played Slaanesh since their book came out, and one did, and but it had been before 3.0 came out, which is completely different in its regard. So I would say 3.0 wise, Slaanesh actually got a little bit of a boost, being able to do all out attack, all out defense. Outside of the point changes, there is a kit there. They aren't completely unplayable, but they're still pretty down there on the totem pole, I would say.
And I think it's difficult, like as an observer, and I enjoy Slaanesh. I've been building a lot of Slaanesh models in I'm building a Daughters of Cain army, but it's an old Warhammer Fantasy throwback to the Cult of Slaanesh, which was this. It was basically like Daughters of Cain and Slaanesh merged, but it was a bit of weird lore. But I've been building a lot of kits, and they're really cool. And one of the things that I've loved about Slaanesh recently is you've had the 2 new kits from Dexcessa and Synergizes. We've literally, at the time of recording, we have just had the recent FAQ, and while we won't talk about the FAQ, there was one particular call out here, and that is that the Forge World Soul Keeper of Secrets, Soul Feaster. You've got a bunch of new rules there. You now have the coalition rules that allows you to do 1 in 4 Beasts of Chaos, 1 in 4 Slaves to Darkness. They can't be your battle line, but all of a sudden you've now unlocked a whole bunch of new models through different ranges. And while the points did change for you, and they probably maybe were too aggressive in my opinion, it's interesting to hear that, overall you're favorable. Is it going to be 5-0 in the next GT? Probably not, but you're feeling okay at the moment.
I'm going to the next one, so maybe. Yeah, no, I definitely think that they're a great 3-2 army for what you can do. I mean, if you play it well and you really try, I think 3-2 is very easily obtainable. I don't think I've played an army that you can't go 3-2 with. It just depends on certain matchups, but Slaanesh definitely has the kit that they need. I mean, if there's something you need to happen or you want to work around, whether it's a gimmick or whatever, Slaanesh has plenty of models, more than most of the armies out there do, outside of like Stormcast and such. But they have a lot of kit, and then, like you said, being able to do the coalition with Slaves of Darkness, Beasts of Chaos, and having Tzeentch as an ally, there are some tricks. I've seen the Changeling being able to ally in, and you create this massive slowdown list where you're throwing out shackles. You have the Changeling tying someone down. Glutos has his half movement spell. You can tie down the entire enemy army, and then also throw out the mesmerizing mirror on top of that, and so everything's just stuck in there, moving like nothing. If there's especially if they're a dwarven army like Fire Slayers. And that's really tough to get through, but it is super gimmicky, right? You go up against one Lumineth player with Techless, and you just instantly lose. So
I feel like Slaanesh, it's always been like people used to play it like hitting you with a hammer. And in the old Locust, where you'd be able to make everyone fight last essentially on a 2+, and then you summon more keepers like literally every turn. Yeah. Like it was a very hammer force. Now it really does feel like you're killing your opponent with a scalpel, and it's just
Yes.
multiple cuts. But it's also how you cut them. You can't just run up the board and just hit where you want to hit. It is very niche and very nuanced. And I think when you make the mistakes with Slaanesh, because it's not durable, you get punished really badly. And I think maybe that's some of the challenges that the community's having, is that they're trying to play a new army and just getting punished because every mistake can be critical.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the to summarize in with two issues with the army itself, because overall most of the stuff in the book is actually quite nice, but because of the points issues and the way that there's not a variety of battle line, I noticed that the big thing is the cheapest battle line we got is 135. I really consider it 140 because most people are going to choose the 10 demonettes instead.
Yeah.
But it's really, I just think, a really poor option to run, and it's either that or you pay the tax to have Painbringers or the I'm sorry, whatever the other guys are, and it's a run battle line, and even or you pay even more just to run the Blissbarb archers, and none of those are great options. They all sound terrible, and it was it. Go ahead.
No, please.
I was gonna say in 2.0, it was one of those things where you could ally in. I'm sorry, not even ally.
Chaos
you could bring
Warriors.
in Chaos Warriors.
You mark them up 5. I remember talking to Russ Veal, and that was his way of getting around some of. While the demonettes are cool, they are quite expensive, and that was one way you get around it. But now, one, they don't count as battle line. 2, they've gone up to minimum unit size of 10, and it's just like you've got, like, what do you do?
Yeah, it's very difficult to usually, and I think what a lot of people want to do is they want to run somewhat of a horde army with Slaanesh. They want to run a bunch of everything, and really the only way that I have been able to viably play them is running a hero spam, and then just run a minimum battle line.
Which is actually was going to be one of my next segues, was from the meta. And again, I haven't played a tournament yet. I'm in hard lockdown, creating shanks and, making up prune juice and all that stuff. But in my, the toilet wine and like making up pizza with noodles and graham crackers. Sorry, I watch too many crime shows. So like I'm not literally in prison, guys. But what I'm noticing at the moment, and we talked about this just before we went on stream, is it's a kind of a wild west right now when it comes to the meta, but it's very hero hammer. It's very most armies that are doing really well probably have over 1,000 points, at least 1,000 points invested in the heroes, and it might be a godlike hero, an Archeon, a Marathi, a Teclis, Alariel's doing really well at the moment with Living City.
Yes.
Like, you're seeing a lot of superheroes, and then throwing down all like the +1s to hits and stuff. Or you're just seeing a lot of heroes, and especially monster heroes, and using heroic actions and monstrous rampages. And Slaanesh has always played hero hammer. Are you still finding that today? Are you still finding that that's working quite well for you? Or
absolutely, I think that one thing to note too is that I am treating my list, which we can go over later, but even in my list, I treat Glutos like an Archaon. And I kind of hit on it in my podcast where like Glutos is very much he's 18 wounds, 3 up save, -1 to hit aura. Well, that sounds a lot like a Tzeentch Archaon list. Granted, he doesn't, and I would say damage wise, outside of Slayer Kings, he is doing with the double fight on average either it depends on the rend or the save of the enemy, but on average he's doing about the same, if not a little more damage than an Archaon can do. Which is, as far as what I have noticed, even when I have done mock battles or playing games and stuff, if they don't get that Slayer Kings off, Glutos hasn't. I've never lost him in a game outside of Slayer Kings.
Yeah,
I mean, he's just that good, and he can hit hard, he can heal himself. He is a very much like, and he's got that 5-up ward save.
And he's got -1 to hit. He's a -1 to hit as well.
Yeah, he's always -1 to hit.
Yeah.
And then he has that 5-up, and it's like, well, that's a lot like Archaon when you're just looking at the War Scroll and watching him go into combat and stuff. He is the hammer that I run up the center of the board to tie everything down. A lot of people are still used to the Keeper spam, where they're running the Keeper in, trying to do that thing that they did in 2.0 before they got the book update. And So yes, it's definitely hero spam, but no, not in the same way that um, that it used to be, where you were just trying to get more keepers on the board. You're not doing that.
And one of the challenges I found going into the second book or the updated book in 2021 was that Keepers of Secrets their command ability didn't self buff. They had to, was it the command ability? So they had to,
Yeah.
so you had to basically run them as like a tag team to self buff each other.
Yep.
But you know, it's interesting because I know when we were talking about this with other people in second edition, you know, we were seeing Glutos kind of rising up. Sigvold, I haven't quite seen anybody using Sigvold competitive. Oh, I'm seeing a little bit actually. That's a lie.
Yeah.
And I know you ran Siggy in your lists. I didn't want to steal too much of your thunder, but you know, you're right. Like people are diverting their hero points in Slaanesh from keeper, double keeper and the lawnmower, the chariots. You know, like people were moving those points, but instead finding other good solutions. Like, as you said, the Lord of Pain, Glutos.
Yeah, I've seen a couple lists where it's the chariots, and then, or if you're running stuff like Dexcessa, and you're trying to keep her as your main damage dealer, and then Glutos is a good, or I'm sorry, and like that's the thing. I feel like a lot of people, I more often than not, people tell me they think Glutos isn't good, which I find hilarious. I think he's the best model in that entire range.
He's just expensive, I think, and that's the challenge. He'll take up one. If you're playing a 2,000-point battle, it's 1/4 of your force. So I think you need to work a plan. You can't just put this in your army and hope for the best.
Yep.
I really like Glutos. I think Glutos is a great model, and it's also got really good rules. But you got to build around it. You can't just put it on the table and run up the table.
Into it. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if it wasn't for his point increase, he would be amazing. Like, I'd run him because he used to be 400. He would be an automatic include in a Tzeentch army. You'd bring him in Tzeentch because he's not gaining anything from the Hedonites book outside of the spell, which they're all garbage under mortals, and then the exploding sixes. Everything else is built on his war scroll, so he's perfect in a Tzeentch army. You know, so that was something that I understood why they increased it. He's a lot like a Catacross as far as like everyone thinks he's a support, but you know, it's one of those things where Catacross is what 500 points at least. So you know, a lot of people want to automatically toss him to the side, saying that's way too expensive for my army. But in most cases, it's like, well, he's better than a keeper in almost every way, and you know,
I think the challenge that a lot of people have had at the moment, and what I'm finding, is people are taking their second edition list and then trying to cram it into third edition. And the most success, and just talking to people, the greatest successes they're finding is starting with a clear slate, looking at the command point structure, looking at battle tactics, looking at the way the game is now playing. And I found that lesson out really early when I started playing some tabletop simulator games. Was I'm like, right, I need all these, you know, small minimum size units so I can take objectives, and I'm going to need to screen here and do this. But the boards is smaller. There's less objectives. You know, there's more of these things where I'm getting additional battle tactic point or victory points in my battle tactics for either killing a unit, denying an opponent a unit. So actually it's rewarding me in a very different way. And now my list is feeling more third edition. I can see the trap. And I think you're right. If you just try to cram Glutos into a list, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, he's great, but it's very similar to, you know, like, what is it? A lot of like Archaon. If you just throw him into a list and you don't actually build around it with the rerolls, and you know he doesn't have any way of doing, you know, and he's not putting his buffs on anything, it's very easy to tie him down with either trash or, you know, just dance around him all game, and because he's going to do his damage, he's going to kill things, but there's only so much he can do, and once you realize that, like you're, especially nowadays, right, and especially with the FAQ where he can't have control of more than one objective. So even if they're close by, he has to pick one that he gains control, and something can go and dance and take it, and now he's stuck there, right? That's why I find a lot is he gets on an objective and he's stuck there for the rest of the game, because as soon as he leaves, something else can come and take it, because he's almost half an army.
That's exactly right. Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree. let me throw some rapid fire questions at you.
Sure.
First off, Archaon. So we've talked about Archaon. I'm sorry, I've got to make sure that I pronounce it correctly. Some people don't like me calling it Archaon. Archaon. What are your thoughts with Slaanesh? Do you like it? Do you think it's too many hero points? Where are you at?
I think the tough part is, so if you compare it to like what I think, well, up until recently, what most people find is the more competitive version, which is the Tzeentch Archaon, that you can supplement his points with a bunch of pink horrors. You can throw the 3 battle line of pink horrors in there, and that's 150 wounds on top of him. So it really, and his buff also extends to them as far as the -1 to hit. With Slaanesh, he actually has a really good strategy if you bring the teleport with him, if you like bring a coalition for the teleport, because he can teleport 9 inches away, and then he has a 9-inch re-rolling with 6s to explode. So there's a very good chance that his Slayer Kings goes off in that case. And especially previously, he was an amazing anti-Slaanesh character as well, because he made everyone else reroll 6s, which I think they changed today, but it was really tough fighting him with my army. So I think he was really good in Slaanesh, but I think I would rate it probably second on the, well, sorry, third, because I felt like Slaves to Darkness was his best spot, Tzeentch was his second best spot, and then Slaanesh was the third one. So better than I think Khorne or Nurgle, but definitely just from my play. I'm not an Archaon master or anything.
No, that's fine. I just know
take on it.
I just know Archaon either is in people are loving him Reapers of Vengeance, or they're going in with some Kairos build that seems to be the 2 most popular builds. There's very durable Nurgle builds, and I've seen go on.
The list I lost to was a Tzeentch Archaon list. I killed everything he had by turn 2, except for Archaon, and he ended up Slayer Kings for my units, or for my heroes. So I definitely think that he's good in all of them. He's having the keyword for all of them means that his war scroll by itself is already going to be good. I just think the Slaanesh one gets him where he needs to quicker. The Khorne one, there were 2 or 3 Khorne Archaons that I saw at the tournament, and they all placed in the bottom half. So I was like, well, that summed it up for me. Like,
by the way, Carlos making the real insights in this. Forget 21 minutes of talking Slaanesh. It's all about good players having beards. So that's I don't have the data to prove that, although I do have Marcella coming in tomorrow, so she may disagree. Talking daughters, I'm sure, but we won't go there. Let's talk the next rapid fire question, which was I think Evan might have been frozen. Hopefully not. So is Evan frozen? I think Evan might be frozen. Might just give Evan a minute just to come back in. Hopefully he's not frozen. But overall, like I might actually bring over Evan's list and just show you all just what it looks like initially, and then we'll eventually get to him and find out exactly what it looks like. Whoops. So that's going to be Evan's list when Evan jumps back in, and he's coming back. Great success. What he's got so far is going to be a Lewid Hayes Invaders list. It is going to be Sigvold with, which is going to be the host optional general. It's Glutos in the list. He's just adding his mic back onto the stream, so bear with us. Glutos is going to be in the list. Surprise the Century. Evans just talked about how amazing Glutos is. We've got the Lord of Pain in here with being the general, with the Feverish Anticipation, with the artifact of Oil of... I can't read that from here. It's too far away. And it's also the host option general. You've also got the Keeper of Secrets, which has got the Sinistrous Hand, the Amulet of Destiny, which no surprise. And at the moment with the FAQ, we've had some interesting... We won't go too much in the FAQ, but there seems to be some interesting stuff going on with ward saves and feel no pains. But we'll see how that goes. He's still adding his... Just Cool. And then we've also got, and this is probably where I was a little bit surprised, like what on earth is going on here? Because you've got the 5 pain bringers, you've got 5 pain bringers, 5 pain bringers, 5 pain bringers. And coming in at 160 points versus the Hedonites, or the Demonettes. The Demonettes coming in at, was it 120, 130 versus 160. You're paying a little bit more for your battle line choice, though what they bring to the table is a little bit more defensive build as opposed to the Demonettes. If you're taking 10 Demonettes, like what are you doing with them? And I think it's an interesting mechanic that hopefully Evan will jump back on very soon, or we'll have to re-record this. Being wrapped up with the Warlord Battalion as well as Battle Regiment. Cool. It's coming in at 1950 with no reinforcement. Oh, no, actually, that's wrong. Oh, no, it's right. Actually, he's got no reinforcement points. So he hasn't had to increase the reinforcements at all of those pain bringers. It's at 83 wounds, which is a fascinating one. Just see if he's jumping on at all. Just check my email. It's as Gavin's pointed out here, one, Carlos is loving this. Thanks, Bill. We've got the absolute gorgeous beards going on here. But more importantly, as Gavin's kind of pointed out, it's just annoyingly tough. And I think that's the thing that you wouldn't think about Slaanesh at the moment, is it is super durable. And where your Demonettes would normally fold, they don't take a punch very much. Gavin's rightfully pointed out that Evan has built up a really durable list. So the Lord and Savior here, he's back. Hello, welcome.
Sorry, graphics card's dying, and I haven't been able to find a replacement, so I apologize.
No, that's fine. I was just giving them a bit of a rundown of your list and what it looked like. A couple of rapid fire questions, though, Evan, before we move into the list. We talked a little bit about Archaon and just your experience with Archaon. A couple of other options. What are your thoughts on demons versus mortals with Slaanesh right now? Do you think it's one particular build? Do you think it's a hybrid?
Yeah, I think so. If you look at the book as a whole, everything favors demons as far as the rules. The locust, a lot of the spells, I would say all the good spells are demons, and so there's a lot that I think favor the rules in general are better for demons, and even a lot of the demons only buff other demons. So it's kind of a weird segmented army. So yes, I would say, especially if you are going to run something like Archaon, demons give a lot of those buffs that he would be looking for, especially since he is a demon and immortal. So he gets the best of both.
What about the coalition forces? So your Slaves to Darkness and your Beasts of Chaos. And I know the Beasts of Chaos one has caused confusion in my other videos where people are like, wait a second, you can't bring in Doom Bulls, you can't bring in something from Beasts of Chaos because of the way marking works. But now the coalition forces, as per 3rd edition, allows you to bring in, is it 1 in every 4? Or is it 2 in every 4? It's 1 in every 4.
I believe it's 1 in every 4. So.
Yeah, so you can bring in Beasts of Chaos. They don't fulfill a battle line requirement, so you couldn't go in and get some cheap, Ungor Raiders or things like that to fill in those battle line choices. But have you thought about what Beasts of Chaos or Slaves to Darkness possibly bring to Slaanesh?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is right now that I think a lot of people struggle with is the depravity. And so the idea that anything on the board that suffers either wound or unit model lost, as far as I'm aware, generates depravity. And so being able to bring, as long as you have something that can stay on the board, even if it's a bunch of gores and stuff, and you just save that CP for a battle shock save, like that is huge for their points. And I think that is a huge cover that I haven't even really taken full advantage of myself, just because I don't play and I don't have any Beasts of Chaos. But yeah, that was something like, if you really want to play Slangors, don't buy that unit, and then go and bring some Beasts of Chaos in, because they have a huge range. And I don't know if a lot of their War Scroll spells and stuff, if I remember correctly, and just the monster, they have access to monsters and stuff. So you could bring like a cockatrice that can help with mortal wounds and stuff. So it's pretty. They have a huge range that, although is you're not really getting much out of it, they're not really bringing anything to the table. It provides an extra little layer of wounds because the average list that I have been able to put together is 70 to 85 wounds. It's really low for a 3.0 list, and they can help mitigate a lot of that, hopefully.
And Zach rightfully pointed out that was going to be one of my call-outs would be the Bulgaurs. I think Bulgaurs could be a good inclusion to a Slaanesh list. Is it Ungor Raiders that have a pre-game move? I think it's from memory that allows you. I think it's Ungor or Ungor Raiders. One of the Beasts of Chaos does have a pre-game move that could be really good to again push up forward, maybe generate some early depravity. Create some interesting screens, especially Kharadron Overlords in the FAQ have just gotten some pre-game teleporting stuff through the Alpha Beast pack. So by being able to push them out further with a pre-game move, might work really well.
Yeah, especially keeping them. And I agree. Like if you can move that 6 inches and then they're redeploying outside of that 9, well, they're usually outside that 12-inch threat range that if you're one of your heroes or monsters is in that range, it's just going to die. So I definitely think that that's pretty big. I think against a skilled player, you're going to want that screening or that extra layer of screening, even if it is something that's just going to die on the first turn.
Yeah, and who knows if Stormcast and how Stormcast are going to come in with their new battle tome. Like they've been always about, alpha striking from reserve. That might be a nice.
Yeah, I had a player who at the tournament actually I was fighting a Stormcast player, and it was really tough to get around his stuff. And even his annihilators, I warned him about how depravity works, and he still put annihilators down, charged everything, and I think I got like 7 depravity my first turn. So, or his first turn. I made him go first. So it was interesting about how all that comes together and how having that excess. I think as we get further into it and people start finding the spot, it's going to become way more popular.
Yeah, and Carlos, I'll get Evan to repeat it. I'm sorry. I wish I had an answer here. Slangors, is there a place for them yet?
No. I don't think they're. They could go down probably 50 points, and I don't think I'd still play them. they're that bad.
What makes them bad in your opinion? Like why is it just there's better options that do that role, or is it just there's nothing attractive about the War Scroll?
I don't even know what role they're supposed to fulfill, right? Because they're blocks of 3. They're 160 points if I remember correctly, but they're 5 up save, and their attacks are super low and super bad. To hit, to wound, bad rend, and the damage is kind of mediocre. And just so everything on that War Scroll, if I were to even in Beast of Chaos, I don't think I would take it. I mean, it's just so bad, like overall.
I don't think Beast of Chaos can even take them. I'm pretty sure that was one of their frustrations.
Yeah.
Was that? But one other, they have no home. Poor Converter's Dream. Last rapid fire question. And by the way, if you missed it as well, one of the cool updates that the new book obviously brought was that you can summon from the Fane. So it's probably one really good positive is that even if you do find these alpha strikes shoot off the heroes in Slaanesh, which was always one of the easiest ways to take you down and stop your depravity generation, you can still summon from the Fane, which in my opinion was great. Actually, I've got two questions now, and then we'll go to your list.
Sure.
One, Synessa and Dexcessa, the two what was essentially they're mini keepers, right? They aren't as good. They're not as when I say good, I mean they're not as powerful as the keeper.
Yeah.
But they play a different role. Any thoughts on Dexcessa and Synessa?
So I'm probably I've heard the opposite of how I feel about them, but so I bought them as soon as they came out. I loved the way they looked. I mean, they're fantastic models. Yeah. And their kit is really cool as far as what you like. And whoever was designing it had a really cool idea in mind. I just don't like how they play. And I say that like if I had to choose, Synessa is the one that I have played. And I think that she is a auto include with cogs. Like if you're going to bring her, just cogs are auto included. It's part of her price because the one attack or the one spell is just kind of ridiculous. So usually I'll have a keeper or Glutos summon the cogs, and then that way she can use both of her map wide spells and her command ability. Being able to do a command ability anywhere on the map,
Yeah, it's map wide.
huge. Is huge. Not that we really need it, but the idea that she can do like lurid haze across the map is pretty neat. Dexcessa, I have yet to find a home for her, and it's because one, she's 10 wounds. Probably the worst wounds that I would rather her be 9 wounds because she's not a sub commander.
Because the other one's 9. So
She's
one's
9.
10, one's 9.
Yeah.
And just for the folks playing at home, for they might not know the difference on why going to 10 is bad.
Yeah, the being a leader, but not a sub commander, really hurts. And so most of the time when I'm putting stuff together, I find that Sinessa is really nice because she's a 260 point sub commander. So I can run the Warlord battalion. I can run all those battalions that require a sub commander. But Dexcessa does not. She's 10 wounds. She doesn't get the lookout, sir, which she's a monster anyways, but everything about her kit is just like off. Like it's just like one little tweak that can make it good. And so yeah, that's why I think. And plus her gaining attacks is really cool because she only has to do it once. And like you go into turn 1, fight, and then for the rest of the game she'll generate it even if you don't fight in those. Based on the wording of, I don't know if they meant that intentionally, but that's at least how I read it in the thing. But the problem is she doesn't ever survive. Every game I've played with her, if there is shooting, they immediately kill her, and because she's 4 up save, but that -1 to hit really doesn't save her from anything. And then she just, I don't know, she just isn't tanky enough to. I mean, keepers already aren't tanky, right? But you can put a Amulet of Destiny on one, or even Chilaxi can be like +2 to the save, +3 to the save if you get all the stuff off. So it's just not. I don't think Dexcessa. If I had to choose, like Sinessa, yeah, absolutely, she's really good. She sits there all game just casting her spells, and can be really annoying. But I don't. Sinessa is actually probably better in Legion of the First Prince, because she carries all her spell lore with her. So she doesn't really gain anything from being in a Heat of Night list. But yeah, Sinessa I think is my favorite of the two.
That's been my opinion. I think if I'm going to go a combat focused, I'm probably going to something like a keeper. But the magical support and just some of that board wide control and abilities, I think I've really enjoyed. But I'm not a Slaanesh player, so it's good to hear your thoughts. Really quickly, Soul Feaster, the new. Well, not new, but the Forge World model, do you think is a place to upgrade your keeper to the Soul Feaster and sacrifice the double pile-in or the double attack command ability?
Yeah. So I kind of have to eat my words because I was literally telling someone yesterday that I don't think the Soul Feaster is worth it. But the thing is that a lot of people don't realize you have to be very careful with the keeper's fight twice ability, because one, you have to be within that wholly within 12, which is already kind of difficult to do. But also, if you used a command, she can't use more than one command ability in that phase, and then whatever you put it on can't have been benefited from a command ability in that phase as well. So it's really tough when, like, let's say I'm throwing Glutos or I'm throwing Sigvald in there. I have to be careful not to use all out attack or all out defense, because I need to use that fight on her. So it's one of those things where you have to be really careful leading into it. Sometimes I have to choose not to use it so that I can make sure that my whatever, like Glutos or whatever, or Sigvald is surviving, because they're in combat with something that might kill him if I don't use all out defense. But then I lose out on the fight twice.
Yeah, I can imagine you get straight to the combat phase, get super excited, throw down all attack, all out defense, and then you go straight to the file twice. You're like, oh wait, I've already issued or received a command in this.
Been so many times where it's like, oh shoot.
You're like, oh. I mean, I imagine that would work really well with their finest hour, but yes, you've probably got to pull back But it's also probably good that you know that you're going to issue all out attack or all out defense somewhere else. So
right, but it also makes it a problem too, because like Sigvald, for instance, as far as I'm aware, anything that's in the deep strike can't use heroic actions. So because they're off the board. And so I was like, I can't find a Stour or Sigvald. So I actually, if you look at my list, I priced it at 1955 so that I could guarantee I get that Indomitable Triumph, so that I can give that +1 to wound for Sigvald. So I mean, it's kind of silly to do, very gimmicky, but there wasn't a single game that I ever had anyone that was at 1955 or lower. So.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it. It's certainly something to consider, because you got to remember. You've definitely got to remember, especially like as I've been going through my books, remembering the difference between second edition and third edition. One of the big ones is they can only issue or receive a command, and something that I've not struggled with recently, but especially with heroes, is if someone gets a roar off onto my hero and shuts that down, then you've just shut down the double pile in like that.
And it's one of those things where, so I mean, going back to your original thing, yes, I think the Soul Feaster definitely has some play now, especially since it only costs 12 depravity to summon. I think that's huge, because you can choose a keeper or the Soul Feaster, and if you are in a game where you're generating depravity but you really need that extra boost, I would say if you have enough for turn 3 and you already have your keeper secrets on the board, summoning a Soul Feaster is perfect, because you're not really using 2 double fights, because your heroes are not all locked into combat and all locked into combat with something that they need to fight twice for. So a Soul Feaster, although they are less attacks, I don't like their War Scroll spell. I think they're like a mini, like a they're priced correctly in the fact that they're not as much as a keeper, but as far as a summoning goes, it's kind of torn, right? Because they what I like about them is they can still do the what's it called, the where they do the D3 mortals to an enemy and stuff, like the temptation. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry.
I wasn't sure where you're going with it.
I think it was the temptation, where you can like do the temptation, and I actually found out you can stack the temptation on the same model, and I ended up killing a Star Drake because of it. So, I had 2 keepers just every two battle rounds in a row. I kept offering temptation. He thought he could tank it out because it had Amulet Destiny, and then he failed the mortals. So, it was pretty interesting to watch that happen.
I know some early thinking in my Discord. They're talking about potentially a niche build within Godseekers with the Soul Feaster. But to your point, it is a little bit cheaper than a keeper. They might be better to keep in your summoning pool as opposed to actually buying in your list. Unless you're building a list and you find you don't have enough points for a keeper and you don't want to make a sacrifice on everything else.
Yeah, I think so realistically, if we're talking about keepers and Soul Feasters in general, like those type of greater demons, I really don't think you bother paying for them unless you have Amulet of Destiny to bring. I really don't like their War Scrolls without that 5-up ward save on it. And then if you're trying to run more than one, I just don't like it at all. Because I really like Shalaxi, but I think she just dies to everything. I mean, there's unless it's a hero that shouldn't be in combat with her, it doesn't take much to kill her, do the 14 damage, because she's still only a 4-up save, and all her buffs are to heroes.
Yeah. It's what a crazy world we're living in right now. I think there's definitely needing more mortals. Especially long range damage that's outside of spells. I mean, it's a weird meta we're currently in. I can't wait for it to settle a little bit. And I think for me the big lesson as well has been not relying on combat command abilities, and anywhere I can get like an aura benefit that can avoid raw. Like the amount of times I've been done by raw. Obviously Hunters of the Heartland can help me keep my units protected, but for my heroes that might go all out attack, that I might be like going up for a big stack, that raw on a 3+ is just just
It's
brutal.
really good.
It's great because you can obviously shut down somebody. I can shut down your double pile-in, but for you who's preparing and planning and so you've got to have a plan B. So
most of the time, whenever I would charge someone, we just roared each other. That's what most people, and the person who didn't get roared on probably died.
Yeah. Or you get the double roar. It's like, cool, I'm roaring you. You can't use a CP. Okay, I'm roaring. You can't use a CP. Cool. Where
nothing happens. Yeah, it's just like who has the better war scroll at that point. So
I know for me, I've just been looking at other ways where I can probably maximize my Hunters of the Heartland, just so I've got a plan B, so I'm not relying on a super bad.
I would say Slaanesh is probably pretty tough for Hunters of the Heartland because they're so CP dependent that you want to try to have Warlord or the command entourage for the extra CP. I mean, I think it's like super important, especially if we're ranking them. I actually don't really care for Godseekers. I think Laird Hayes with the Deep Strike does more than what Godseekers can do on average. So it's probably Laird Hayes, Pretenders, and then Godseekers if I had to guess. But yeah.
Well, let's talk about your list now that I had to do the fill in when your graphics card shit itself. Before I do that, really quickly, reserves. You talked about this particular build, Lord Hayes, with you've got the you can choose 3 units and put them into reserve, right?
D3.
That's It's D3. Sorry. So with the board size shrinking, because there's less space across the board, and there's also less distance between us as opponents.
Right.
How are you finding that impacts your reserve options? Are you finding that your opponents have less models on the board, so it's not an issue? Are you finding that you've got to be smarter with the types of units you put into reserve? Like, what's your general feel?
Oh yeah, it's like the super gimmick, right? Like I trick my opponent every single time into either falling for it, and in which case it goes as planned, or they plan for it, in which case I just don't do anything, and then they're like, "Oh wait, I thought you were gonna attack me," and then they've kind of because they have to spread their army, because there is a lot less that they can maneuver. Even my first game when he had 60 pink horrors, he still couldn't because of the coherency. He couldn't spread them one out and block everything that he was looking for. So it was one of those things that he tried his best to do it, but there was a little gap in between. And with the pile-in being different, where it's not the closest model, it's the closest unit, I can get that extra swing. And so normally there was 2 ways that this happened. I would deep strike, and because your average is 2 that you're deep striking. So Sigvald was always going in deep strike. Never I don't think Sigvald is ever worth bringing unless you have the deep strike. So if you're trying to run him in Godseeker or run him in Pretenders for whatever reason, I really don't think it's worth it because now he's vulnerable, and it's kind of like Gotrek, where as soon as Gotrek you see him, everything else just stays away from him. And I fought a player, same thing. He had a Gotrek on the board. I was super worried about it. Never got into combat outside of one thing that I let him get in combat with, because you can just redeploy outside of the effective range.
And I was gonna say that is probably 2 big things that probably work in your favor, or maybe work against you, depending on who you're playing and what side of the coin. But redeploy, that one command ability, is probably one of my favorites in AOS 3. The ability to deny your opponent a combat, or at least make it a lot harder with them, and or even redeploy and move off an objective, a battle tactic or things like that, can be painful. But the other change that I just kind of clicked with, and I thought I'd ask you for your opinion, is run is now different. Run, retreat, and move are now 3 different things. You used to be able to run out of combat, obviously roll the dice to extend it to make sure you're outside of the 3. But given that your retreat, and I've seen some interesting mechanics in combat where there's been multiple combats and it's quite hard to get outside of 3 to retreat. But being that Slaanesh is super fast, I imagine that's a great tool you got up your sleeve.
Yeah, if you can survive. Usually there's something like, so like a perfect example is Glutos. I can't tell you how many times he's done like a slingshot off of something, and then I get the double turn, and then he charges across, like, and people don't ever see it because he gets that run in charge. So he retreats out of something he doesn't want to be within, then runs and then charges, and he's 25 inches away from where he started that previous turn. And the thing is, he's healing that, he can heal that entire time. And then Sigvald, same thing. Sigvald's only 6 wounds, but he's so hard to deal with. He's like a mini Gotrek where he gets into something, and that's what I think most people misunderstand with Sigvald, is he is not run up the board, charge into the chaff. He's pick a target that you plant, like he's a lot like Morsar eels with in Deepkin. It's very similar because the deep strike is exactly the same. He has the +3 to his charge, exactly the same as the Morsar eels with the whatever that dude's name is.
With Volti or the Killian King.
Thank you. Yeah, and he's trying to get that. You get that +3 to charge. He gets into him, and then you kill that thing, and then that's really, he's mission accomplished. And that has happened every single game with him that he's been worth it. His points is I pick something that's on the side in the corner, charge it in, kill it, because usually something with the Amulet of Destiny. That was the only reason why I thought to bring him, was because at the tournament that we were in Dallas, every list I went up against when I was playing with my troll list was everyone had Amulet of Destiny. I had Amulet of Destiny, and Sigvald is great against that. I mean, I one shot rolling average an anointed on Frostheart Phoenix,
and that's going to be. And depending on how Games Workshop ruled the latest FAQ, which is talking about feel no pains and ward saves being different and having potential stacks, everyone, like, I know the minute in my Discord, everyone that when they saw that rule are building out super durable Frost Lords and anointed on Phoenixes, and I think Nurgle discussing resilience. So people are just building like super tanky heroes. And by the way, Ryan, thank you so much. It actually is Soul Scryer, not the Archillian King. I remember that one now. I'm thinking more like that jerk. That jerk with just like 4 CPs and double, all the attacks. They can't do that now. But with, I think getting through those ward saves with something like Sigvald. I know the Auric guys at the moment, obviously with there's one particular, the Drakfoot, that could be a really good way, because everyone is taking Amulet of Destiny. It's too good. People are taking Bless. People are taking any way to get that ward save.
Ethereal Amulet, but
it
better.
Is because that's why Gotrek is such a monster, because he has only 8 wounds, 3 up armor save, ward save, and then has the ability to you've got the heroic action heal. You can then double down with Emerald Life Swarm for another heal. There are other ways to heal, and having Sigvald go, right, cool, you got Gotrek, and a lot of auto players are taking Gotrek, or you're taking a Mega Gargant with the Amulet of Destiny, and it's just really hard to pull down. Cool story, bro. I'm just going to cut through you.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure Sigvald doesn't kill Gotrek. Even when I do the math, even if he fought twice, he would not survive Gotrek attacking him to actually fight a second chance. But as far as like we were talking about, especially if that rule is, I really hope if anyone from Games Workshop, if you're listening, please don't bring that back, because I'm just going to see. I was talking to my brother about running Settlers Gain, bringing a bunch of Phoenix Guard with Techless, so then it's a 4-up with a 5-up. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. So it's nobody copy that list, please don't. So it's one of those things where Sigvald is like super important, and I think a lot of people, they either overestimate him or underestimate him. And if they underestimate him, then he kills whatever they don't want to die. They're like, oh, that thing with the ward save, those 20 Phoenix Guard you had, or whatever you have with, a Mega Gargant, he does like an average of 15 damage to a Mega, and then that Mega can't kill him on average, because you just do the +1 save, and then it's like, oh, I'm saving on 5s, and I have a 4-up ward save myself. So there's very little chance that he dies. Well, I would say there's a good chance he can die, but if he gets that fight twice, he's already earned his points. He's almost killed 500 points worth of a Mega Gargant just so that you kill 265 points worth of stuff. So
one, the trade-off there, the 265 is really an insurance policy.
yeah.
It's not a lot of points. And obviously right now in the meta, you can do Mystic Shield for a +1 save. You can do All Out Defense if you want a +1 save. So those things that are Mega Gargant really strong, for example, the Ren 2, Ren 3, put Siggy on cover. There are so many ways to get a +1 that you can mitigate that Ren 3 and just be on either a +1 or really reduce the impacts down. So I love it. I love this as an insurance policy.
And real quick, I mean, yeah, and the thing is too is he's a great distraction because if he gets in, he usually kills something that's worth his points, so it's like mission accomplished. But the big thing is too is like he's too tanky for you to just throw your chaff at it. And he, him especially when he gets that charge off, he fights first too. So normally he kills whatever he fights. Then if I know that I can get Sigvald into what he can kill, the keeper will go with him, either running the keeper up, or charging or deep striking with Sigvald to get that double fight off because he doesn't have any buffs on himself at that point. And usually Sigvald does way more damage than what my opponent expects, and then they overcompensate by sending everything they can at Sigvald when he's nowhere near the objectives. And so I just slowly move up the objectives, take everything, and then I've pretty much won at that point.
Yeah, he's a massive distraction card effects.
And yeah, one thing too, Sigvald in this is my general as far as the I can run up to 3 generals, and Sigvald is not the chosen general, but he is one of the host option generals. What that means is I get depravity when he's in enemy territory, which he's going to be most likely because of the deep strike. And when he's killed, I get a CP. So it's one of those things where his trade-off is actually worth 50 points, and then he generates that depravity on my turn because he's probably not dying on my turn. So it's one of those things where it forces my opponent to do something. They don't want to leave him in the back line to keep killing all the stuff.
And where that also works really well is one of the battle tactics that rewards you for having is it two units in enemy territory. Yes. So not only are you generating additional depravity, you're not only getting additional depravity for it, and you're obviously causing your opponent a nightmare, but you're then scoring battle tactics. So it might be a really good early one.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah, and the big thing is too is like, so if you're looking to play Keeper Secrets as like your heavy hitter, we talked about it before, but I highly discourage that kind of mentality. I think that the Keeper Secrets is pure like support character, either supporting Sigvald into guaranteeing that he kills what he needs to, or supporting Glutos into making him more of an Archaon type hero. So it's one of those things where I think a lot of people want to play the old keeper mentality where they just run him up the board, charge it in, do something. But really, I never did that. That my keeper stayed behind Glutos 3 of my games and stayed with Sigvald the 2 other games. And the one go trek came, killed Sigvald, and then was like, I'm gonna pick the keeper to be my, bring it down. And then I just got the heck out of there, and and that was the end of it. Gotrek never got into combat because I'm in the corner of a map, and he can't get anywhere.
And for the people who haven't picked up Slaanesh for a while and are probably trying to work out why the Keeper doesn't do what it used to do, one of the big changes was the way Locust works. So you could really charge in with the Keeper of Secrets, and it was a low-risk strategy because you could go in, do absolute carnage because your opponent was fighting last, and there were so many different options to make your opponent fight last that you would probably do more damage than they would do back. But now that's changed a little bit, so I can see the role has played more of a support piece and maybe more as a like coming in as a second wave as opposed to the first line of offense, which was just this missile that went in, tied you up, and let you score.
Yeah, and the thing is with the keeper too, she has some good sustain. You have 14 wounds with a 4-up save, which isn't terrible. I kind of trashed like that by itself is pretty bad, but having the 5-up ward save is really helpful because you're talking almost like 20 wounds at that point, 18 to 20 wounds. But then the Sinister's Hand on top of that is healing a lot, and you can be a little picky with what you get into. And then also one thing where if she gets wounded to the point that you're like kind of concerned, outside of the hand healing her, she also can do the heroic actions, and Sig or Glutos gives a +1 bravery, so it's an 11, not a 10. And so that's something that I think a lot of people underestimate about how sustained the keeper is. They think, oh well, I can kill this keeper because the summoned keeper that I killed, in one turn with, whatever, just some units, and I'm going to try to do it with this, and it doesn't work out. So, yeah.
And it might be calling out the chat is, the chat's on fire. There's a whole bunch of cool ideas being thrown up. Tyler Buckets, he was on my Legion of the First Prince show. And, one of the call outs he made was, what are your thoughts on bringing 20 Marauders in as opposed to a Painbringer? We've got Gav talking, I think one of your crew members, talking about, potentially bringing in a Sorcerer Lord from the Slaves to Darkness. Yeah. I think the great thing here is this is not the one and true only internet list you can ever run. Take this, play with it, bring in your favorite models, bring in your different play styles. There's definitely, in my opinion, a place for the Marauders. I think getting that guaranteed charge, there's some really cool things you could possibly do. Yeah, Chaos Sorcerer Lord on Manticore, another good option. Sure. I think as season is to taste. I think we already talked about Dexcessa and Sinessa or the Soul Feaster.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is too is like the Soul Feaster. Going back to that, you can ally that in with other armies, which is really cool because it is sub 400, which I don't think there's any really one of those kind of monsters that are that. The depravity generation doesn't really mean anything, but the idea of having a keeper that can do all that is still there are some play with that. But yeah, it is very with the Slaves to Darkness and the Beasts of Chaos especially. I think you can really make any list out of Slaanesh and perform about the same. I just think that like Glutos is really the glue that makes you go that step higher. If you're looking to play competitive, Glutos is a must.
And I wanted to get to Glutos. So I have a Glutos. It is a conversion piece. I love the model, but more importantly, it actually has some really good rules. Is it an offensive piece, a defensive piece, a support piece? How do you play and build around it? Because we did talk right at the start of the show that you can't just put in Glutos and it's going to do great things for you. You really got to think about the build around it and optimize essentially 1/4 of your force.
So I think a lot of people, and I was guilty of this too, where they play them like Fatacros, right? Like that's what we call them in Texas, as a Fatacros. So it's one of those things where a lot of people saw his War Scroll, saw how similar it was to Catacross, and so they treated it like Catacross. They sat him in the back. He provided the buff. He had his magic casting, and then if things got dicey, then he'd get into combat. I think that's kind of misplaced. I think that going back to what we were originally talking about, he's very similar to he's very similar to the Archaon setup, where like he's not as tanky, or he can be as tanky. He can be he can do a lot of damage too, although his hit and wound values aren't as good on average. But the idea is that he's good. Overall he's like a jack of all trades, but in 3.0, jack of all trades is actually quite good because whatever you need, there's a command ability for it. There's a bit like spell that you can get off. There's something that you can do to counter that. And so if you go up against an army like Lumineth, let's say, that just instantly shuts down your magic, you're not going to really get any spells off. That's okay. Glutos, doesn't. The spells are just extra little, a cherry on top, and that's how his entire kit works for the most part. Oh well, he doesn't get enough hits off. Well, that's just a cherry on top. He can be that tank that you need to. So normally, what I do is I put all the spells on him, and then I charge him up the center, and then if I need a tank to hold down everything, I just lurid haze him. He's already got Mystic Shield on. If I really need it, I will Finest Hour him because he's great bait, especially those like Maw Crushers and stuff. They really think they can do all that damage, and he's just really tough to get through. And the big thing too is that you play him like Archaon in Tzeentch, but you also make sure that all your units that you have are also within that 12 inches, so that he can provide that -1 to hit aura onto all of them. So that's real big.
Just one quick clarification coming out of Silmaru, I think it's called. The Glutos +1 bravery is only for mortal hedonites, we believe. So,
I'm
sorry. We can't boost the keeper up to a bravery of 11, but I don't think that there's such a marginal difference between bravery 10 versus bravery 11 for the heal.
I'm usually healing. I'm sorry I misspoke on that, because usually it's on Glutos or the Painbringers as well, because the Glutos is a 9, I believe, and so he makes himself a 10 on top of that. So, but yeah, I mean, 10 is still great. I think 10 is usually where, because I play a lot of destruction armies, and the bravery is not satisfactory enough to risk it.
I play cities, I play Gargants, and they are bravery 6 to 7. So for me, trying to heal up my big chicken, my free guild general on chicken, it's usually a 1, and I'm probably better off generating extra CP or their finest hour if I'm only got like a bravery hot garbage. But when I'm looking at Glutos, I think it's confusing for some people because it's such a heavy war scroll. You get all these combination of things when you are at, particular parts of the battle round. Do I wait up and charge it up like a black coach and then release it in turn 3 or turn 4 when it's powered up? But then at the same time, I'm getting rerolls to charges. I've got that half moving for the magic spell, the crippling famishment
half
is
move, half run, half charge.
Playing people who have the Khorne version of that, which is the Khorne Demon Prince with the aura, you realize how not broken it is, but how powerful it is to deny somebody a battle tactic who are trying to kill a particular unit. Cool story, bro. You can't get into combat. Bonus points. I then use a redeploy, and I've just halved your charge. It's charge as well, right? Yeah. So I've halved your charge. So not only have I redeployed and potentially moved an extra 6 inches away, but I've also halved your charge, halved your move, halved your run.
You just have to be outside of 6 inches and you're done, right? You can't make that charge.
You can't make the charge. You've denied them a battle tactic. You've stopped them from getting onto an objective. That killing your opponent isn't going to win the game. It's battle tactics and denying your opponent their opportunities to score. That to me is the winner. That's what I love. Unfortunately, it's only a +1 to cast. It is a 7. So try to find ways to get an additional +1 like Arcane. But I love that.
Yeah, normally for Glutos, his 2 spells that he does, Mystic Shields himself, and then he either does an Arcane Bolt, like a cheeky Arcane Bolt, or he'll go and do the half, if there is something within 18, which if I make my opponent go first, and that's the thing too, is like in most cases my opponents want to go first, which I thought was kind of hilarious because there's not much I can do if you're outside of that 18. So if you want to win against Slaanesh, a good way to start is making them go first and just screening effectively. But and this list is a 5-drop list, which beat most. I think I tied on 1, but ended up winning the roll off. And then 3, I was lower drops then, and 1 beat me, and that was the toughest one, but I ended up still pulling that one off. So it was one of those things where Glutos kind of just pumps all his stuff, and then I run him up to the center of the board, and a lot of people can't resist that, and they can't ignore it, and so they don't see it as an Archaon model. And that's why I think if you're running Glutos, don't be scared to move him off the board. Even if he doesn't kill anything, he's going to tank everything out. And because like I said earlier, I have never lost Glutos in combat outside of a Slayer King.
Yeah,
and I've played him for dozens of games.
When you look at Glutos, I think most people assume it's like a traditional wizard wagon, a Hurricanum, a War Altar, a Cauldron of Blood. it's got a decent armor save, a bunch of wounds. It'll probably cripple in combat, like, and it's the 3-up armor save, 18 wounds, 5-up ward save, has the ability to heal. It's I think you probably catch people off guard the first time, and they learn their lesson pretty quickly the second time.
That's this entire list. If you're curious to know, I always fool a person the first time, and then the second time they know what they're looking out for. And so it is Slaanesh in general. Like if you're trying to figure out like where I rate them against the other Chaos Gods, I think as far as if you're looking at the depravity versus blood tithe points versus fate points versus whatever the Nurgle one is, the problem is Slaanesh is the easiest one to stop. So the way that you stop it is any of these units that I have, you kill them. You kill them, and that you focus all your stuff on one, and then move on to the next. And doing that will usually, because I saw someone ask about depravity, how much I generate on average.
I was going to ask after you finish this. I was going to talk a little bit. We haven't talked depravity, so
So it's all about anything on the board, either your units or your opponent's units that is wounded, has either taken a wound, even if they've healed it, they did correct that.
Yeah,
so
that's
even
clarified.
If they healed in the same turn, or if they have less models than they started with in that turn. So the depravity can generate quite quickly. And if we're talking about in the 5 games I did at that GT, 3 of them scored over 30 points. Like I got over 30 depravity, which is huge. I mean, I was not getting ready to summon a 3rd keeper if it had gone on to the actual 5th turn. In the one though, I only got to 12. I only got to summon 1 keeper. We got to turn 3. And that's because they knew what they needed to do as far as focusing down a unit at a time. And I was fighting OBR, so there was a lot of resurrection involved. But it was one of those things that they're the easiest to counter. With blood tithe points, I feel like there's a set number of blood tithe points in the game because there's a set number of units in the game. But it's almost inevitable that it's a worthy trade to kill a unit and do it. But if your whole goal is, okay, well, I just have to make sure I kill a unit, well, you're overcommitting to it, you're killing it, but then I don't get anything from it. I'm not getting my points back on my expensive units. So depravity is very swinging, where against a good player, I'm lucky if I ever get a keeper to summon, which as far as depravity goes, I don't really summon anything outside of a keeper. I don't think that demonettes or any of the heroes outside of it are really worth it, in my opinion. That could be misplaced. But I find that like in 2.0, summoning demonettes was really good because you could overwhelm the objective and steal it or whatever, or because you could get that charge and stuff, and there was enough of a board between your heroes and the fate or the
Fane.
The Fane, thank you, where you could summon the demonettes and take an objective or steal back an objective and still be outside that 6 inches. But now I really don't. I just think keepers are better. They got their monsters. You can equip them with a spell when they're summoned. Everything about their kit is worth the 12 points to get it.
But you can't score victory points off battle tactics because it's only starting army, right?
Army.
A lot of them is starting army. So you summon.
So you have to be careful with that. But they're still monsters as far as if they die, your opponent will get a point from from your Gur thing. So you have to be careful with what you're summoning. But I think the pros outweigh the cons in that part, where in most cases, if you can summon if you're on your 2nd keeper summon, you're probably way ahead in the game already. But that 1 extra keeper is huge. I mean, even against the game that I lost, but against Archaon Tzeentch, I only lost because I failed a charge with a summoned keeper. I needed to make a 6-inch charge. I failed at rerolling, and it was a heartbreak. But that was it wouldn't have happened had I not had the points to summon it. So it's huge on summoning those keepers because they count as 5 models. Whatever they get into, if it's less than 10 wounds, they probably clean them up.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, especially in the current battle pack, and it might change, when we move away from the realm of Gur, and there's so many cool things. You can you can get a spell to turn someone into a monster. So if you need the extra monster from your starting army, you can cast Metamorphosis. To your point, you do give away a victory point each turn if a monster dies in that turn. So if you lose 2 keepers in one turn, then you only still lose that 1 victory point, or you give away a victory point.
One thing too is that I did forget to mention about Glutos. He's not a monster, and that's very important because he can make himself a monster, and everyone, like, every time the look on my opponent's face when they see that, oh well, it's not a monster, I don't get these buffs. So like when I was fighting the Stormcast player, he had a Yndrasta with a bunch of Praetors, and I charged Glutos into it, and he's like, oh, you're bracketed from the 10 wins. I'm like, oh, he's not a monster. I killed Yndrasta eventually between Sigvald and Glutos, and then I made him a monster. So, and then I was able to take an objective because all he had left was a Liberator, like 3 Liberator blocks and a Star Drake. So it's kind of important with that spell.
And that actually is a really good one, because that could be a really good late game monster, because people are going to try to take down monsters, and as we've already rightly pointed out, summoned keepers or summoned monsters aren't going to get the additional victory point stuff because it's
your starting army. Yeah,
but Glutos would be a starting army, and you get the +1 to the cast. It's super durable, as we've already talked about. It's I can see real value in that. That's a really, really good model.
I think to any Slaanesh person that wants to play Slaanesh, Glutos is your starting model. He is always, even if you're like, oh, I want to run a keeper or whatever, fine, run both of them. Like that, like it's not a bad thing to. You're talking the point cost for a keeper of secrets and and Glutos is only slightly more than Archaon. You're talking about like 900 points or so, or 895, right?
Yeah, if you run a double keeper and a Glutos, you're 1,500 points, just under 1,500.
No, I'm sorry, a keeper and Glutos.
Oh, a single keeper. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Sorry. Yeah, so if you roll, you're about the same price. You're about the same price as Nagy and Negation.
But your kit is your 4 spells. You have a bunch of stuff. I would say it's arguably better because you can rotate that ability where Archaon is just one big target and he's stuck in killing whatever he gets into. So if he gets into pink horrors or whatever, he's wasting his turn. He's not worth his points in that. Where Glutos and the keeper can rotate, swing, and work off each other and provide buffs to each other through the -1 and the fight twice and stuff. So I really, really like that combo.
Although in saying that, we did get an update on pink horrors, and this is not the Zent show, so you might find Archaon is less protected by pink horror hordes. But I want to talk finally about your Painbringers. So you've got 4 units of Painbringers. Bucket's talked about it. Why don't you bring Marauders? Other people are thinking about it. Why not Demonettes? Why not Chaos Warriors? Why not some other type of... Even people like, I know early on with Hedonites, people were talking about your archers, even as having 1 unit of archers. The bliss barbs, just to chip at your opponent, just to, do some depravity. Even if you split the attacks and generate a little bit of depravity. Why did you double down on 4 units of 5 Painbringers?
Well, originally my list was actually thematic. I was like Sigvald with all this mirror stuff, and so that's why, I painted my Painbringers with a bunch of mirror paint scheme. That was the original goal. But I noticed that in 3.0, there's not a lot of mortals out there, and there's not a lot of shooting out there. And so, I mean, there is, of course, but like there isn't a lot between armies. It's usually like an army specializes in the mortals, or army specializes in shooting.
And but, you're talking mortal wounds, not mortal as in mortal keyword.
Wounds.
Just in case anyone's thinking about, like, you're like, wait a second, half the book's mortal. No, you're talking mortal wounds.
Mortal wounds. So when you take that into consideration, the Painbringers actually look pretty. They're way too expensive. I think, compared to their Chaos Warrior counterpart, it's no joke how they're overpriced. But they're surprisingly tanky, and they're actually pretty decent in combat. I mean, they're doing a lot of attacks, and they're exploding their 6s to hit, and they're doing mortal wounds in addition on the wounds with rend on the attacks that go through. So there's surprisingly, I think on average they do like 5 damage with a 5 block between mortals and then the -1 to hit. But that starts to add up quite a bit, right? Their whole point is how much depravity can I generate off of these 5 pain bringers? And that's what normally happened is they would either die getting slammed into by a Maw Crusher, and they did their job by tanking that Maw Crusher and wasting all its attacks, or they would get attacked with Liberators and be stuck all game just generating depravity, or they would get stuck in with any of the. They usually ran up against other, single unit, minimum and then
Okay.
2. So they would come across something, and most of those can't kill the Painbringers because in combat in melee they are a +1 save already. And then if they had rend, well, I have all out defense, I have Lurid Haze, I got all this stuff that I can make them very difficult, and they were usually always in the range of Glutos. So it's -1 to hit as well. And so
And
that's where if people are like, well, this doesn't make much sense. Well, when you stack the -1 to hit, and they're usually only swinging at 1 Painbringer block or 2 Painbringer blocks, well, I happen to have 2 ways to add +1 defense or +1 save to both of them. And so between the two of that, it was very difficult for my opponents to get through that in almost any case. And then Glutos is usually in combat with the third. So you're able to tie down everything and create a brick wall of sorts.
the Painbringer shields didn't get updated. Can you still re-roll the save roll?
No, they changed it.
That did, okay. I was wondering where you're getting the +1 from. I was assuming you were going all out defense. Okay, so you don't get the re-roll.
Arguably
as
worse,
per...
Like
I was just, no, but I was what I was thinking in my mind was I'm like, wait a second, I can get I'm a base 4 up. I get a +1 to the save through all out defense. Then I get to re-roll that. Okay, so that was one of the updates in
+1 now.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so you get the +1.
Yeah, so normally they're weaker against things that have no rend, because it's just that plus they're just a 3-up save at that point, so they're failing a lot of those on 1s and 2s. But against things that have good rend and low number of attacks, which we're entering that monster era where there's very little -3 rend. Maybe some Gargants have it, but like Archaon, for instance, I'm usually putting a +2 save on those Painbringers, and so in a lot of cases that monster is wasting a whole turn just getting into Painbringers and then maybe killing them.
160 points. 160 points.
Perfect.
And it's super easy for you to get to a +2 or a +3 save. Right. Well, sorry, when I say +2 or +3, I'm talking about the modifier to ignore rend, not to get them at a 1-up save, because we know we can only get them up +1.
Yeah, maximum. And that's the thing too, is the entire army is like that, right? Everything is good saves. The keeper has the worst save at a 4-up save. Everything else is technically 3 and can get better. And so, with Lurid Haze, you have an extra all-out defense that you can do that doesn't get in the way. And so that's why I think Lurid Haze is the best, because I can hit 3 things with a +1 save. Well, technically 4. You got something Finest Hour, you got something with Mystic Shield, something with all-out defense, and something with Lurid Haze. That's 4 pluses to save, and then everything else is already a 3-up save in melee. And so you have no good targets to swing at. And if you don't have mortal wounds, and you're not shooting with your attacks, then it's really tough to get rid of these 160-point models. You're wasting your turns trying to kill them, and that gives my units like Sigvald or the Keeper that usually aren't in combat with anything to go around and assist and kill things. And the Lord of Pain too. Usually, I can't tell you how many times I threw the Lord of Pain into something like a Maw Crusher. He would take 15 damage, and then I would do the ward saves, which reflect all the wounds back at him. So, I usually did 6 or 7 damage, and he's basically just a Painbringer unit by himself.
And what's obviously great as well is with the ability to do mortal wounds on an unmodified 6, they've got a base of 3 up. If you need more 6s, you could always throw down all that attack. Yeah. If you generate 6s to hit, obviously they explode and turn into 2 attacks. So you could really potentially generate a lot of mortal wounds from the blade.
Yep.
In addition to the defensive mechanism, and it's 160 points. So interesting, very interesting.
Usually, on average, I saw because usually one Painbringer block would die immediately, or would die without doing anything. But the other 3 would survive at least until turn 3, and each one generated around 3 to 4 depravity. That's what I was seeing with most of them, because they're doing 2 to 3 combat rounds each, and they're both getting hurt. They're usually not killing the enemy unit they're fighting, and they themselves are not dying. And so between the 2 of them, that's 2 depravity each battle shock phase that they're generating. And so the depravity would rack up quite a bit. And so even if I lost 2 units of Painbringers over the course of that turn, well, that's almost 12 points that I can summon towards a Keeper's Secret. So they're kind of like how in Beasts of Chaos you're sacrificing to the Herdstone to summon something better, and the points end up. That's the whole goal, right? Like, you're just trying to last long enough so you can bring more Keepers of Secrets, more stuff that can help you win the game overall. It's definitely an attrition-based army.
Do you think there's a space to flip out one of those units to be Marauders, Slipblade Archers, even maybe something fast like your what are they called, the Seekers, like, Seekers, or even I know when I was talking to, I think one of the gentlemen, Kieran, we were talking about Glutos being supported by Fiends of Slaanesh, and I know you can't stack the minuses to hit, but really.
It helps negate because in most cases, Glutos is really just making your opponent waste an all-out attack. I mean, that's what I usually saw happen, is they're like, oh, well, I do all-out attack. And so they're wasting CP, and I was trying to just use up their resources as much as possible. But yeah, no, I've looked at Fiends, and then instead of bringing before I had the Keeper Secrets in the list being the support rule, I actually had 2 5 blocks of Slickblade Seekers instead. And so they can actually deep strike because they already have innate reroll charges, and but they already move 14 inches and then can charge. They're getting wherever they need to in that first turn. But as far as a battle line unit, so you could easily drop one of, and I'm actually thinking about it right now,
because you've got 4. So that's part of the question, is because if you only had 3 Painbringers, then your options is dropping 1 for Demonettes. Right. But because you've got 4, you could even reinforce one of them to make one unit a 10.
Yep. And I think the thing is the reason why I chose the 5 blocks is because I didn't want my opponent to have an easy target, or like, hey, I'm going to put all my resources into killing this. I really wanted to make it feel like I'm all over the board, slowly moving up and taking their stuff. But I think that the endless spells are really good too. Like, if you were to the problem with my points right now is I already have 45 points to spare, but I don't want to bring cogs. So it's like I could drop it for 160 points, but our cheapest hero that is essentially worth bringing is like 255 points. I think 210 points is what you could do for one, but most of them aren't really worth bringing outside of the Keeper. For demons, I don't think really anything but besides the Keeper Secrets, or maybe Sinessa or Dexcessa. But
I mean, there's probably an argument for for the Contorted Epitome, or even the Mask might have a place, but right. It sounds like for your build, probably not. And especially some of those smaller heroes just get chipped off by Lumineth Archers, for example, or
And the thing is, the problem with I think even the Contorted one is 255 points. So it's still expensive hero. I mean, you're really running out of options, because even if I took my list, I dropped all the Painbringers, took off the Lord of Pain, you're still replacing it with 143 times 140 for the Demonettes. It only leaves you to bring one more hero that's worth less than 300 points. It's just not. I don't think it's viable, because then the Demonettes really don't perform for their points. And people can argue, but it's like, can you reasonably assume that Demonettes are going to last more than one turn in combat? I don't.
If D-minutes were 90 or something, and the difference was 70 between a unit of 10 D-minutes and 5 Painbringers, and that 70 points could be reinvested, there's probably an argument for it.
Yes,
but I think
absolutely.
The general consensus is when you're looking at D-minutes that are currently like 120, 130 versus 160, even worse. But like the difference of 20, you're like, I'm getting more durability, I'm getting mortal wounds, I'm getting a bunch of things. It probably plays in my favor.
Even compare them to Dryads, for instance. I mean, you're talking 10 Dryads is 100 points, and they, on average, will beat Demonettes every single time. Especially if you put them in the woods, you -1 hit, +1 save. You're doing all the stuff that you can to make it where they're just not. I don't see Demonettes really being anywhere near what their points are. They were okay at 110, and that's like really pushing it. I really thought they should have been cheaper than that, but I mean, I think they overestimate the summoning, and so they jumped everything up on points trying to cover for it, when it's probably the most unreliable summoning in the game.
I think if anything, the only way is down when it comes to your summoning. So your points. I can't see them going up any higher than they are. So I think potentially
I said that in when they first came out with the book, but you know.
Well, if you go back to my Hedonites review when I got the new battle tome, I'm pretty sure I made the comment. I'm like, oh, points went up, but I'm sure they were just pricing you for 3rd edition.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I'm like, you guys are on the cusp of 3rd edition. They're probably just pointing you appropriately, and there'll be no change at 3rd edition. Nope, it went up again.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, you know, when I saw Shalaxi go up 100 points, I was like, what is happening?
Well, what are they called? The non-Hellflayers, like 150. What?
Yeah, I mean, it was like everything went up in that book, and it wasn't hit as hard percentage-wise as Tzeentch. But I'm like, well, Tzeentch was pretty decently priced to begin with, but like Slaanesh was already expensive, and then they knocked some of that stuff unplayable. I mean, I see no reason to ever run some of those things.
And please don't take this as a whinge. By the way, it is kind of half a whinge because points did go up, and I think that's part of the negativity in the Slaanesh community is that you're really battling for the points in your army. And I think what I'm seeing here, Evan, is you are building a list with no fat. You are building a list without a priority target. You know, you see certain builds. You see a Marathi, a Gotrek, an Alariel, some type of build. You know what you're going for. But when I look at your list, part of the reason why I was confused was because there is no primary target. There is no, I pick this linchpin out and the whole thing collapses because the Sigvold, the Keeper, the Glutos, the Painbringers, they all work independently, but a smart player like yourself brings it together and makes the most of it on the table. And I think moving forward, especially with Slaanesh, until we see some changes, this is probably a really good approach. And obviously season to taste. You want to do more Demonettes, you want to bring in Sinessa, Dexcessa, you want to bring in Archaon, that's fine. But really think about the idea.
Yeah. And the thing is, too, is that with the support that you're trying to accomplish, a lot of my opponents, it's very easy to see what the mistakes they made. And afterwards, when I would talk to them, they'd be like, oh, you know, I really didn't know what to go after. Because and I throw a wrench in there too, because instead of doing hold the line, so that they're like, oh, I'll focus on the battle line, because that's almost all my opponents picked hold the line as their thing because they just had so much of it. You know, I don't have that, so I picked prize sorcery. So they're like, oh, kill Glutos, kill the Keeper. Well, that's half my army's wounds wrapped up in what you have to try to kill, and they're the tankiest part. So it's all about trying to misdirect your opponent. I don't want to say smoke and mirrors are Slaanesh's best friend, but yeah, that's kind of how you got to play them. And because going up, if I had played those 5 opponents again, I probably wouldn't have gone 4-1. I probably would be a 3-2 just because of they know now what to look for.
And by the way, and I can only assume here that it's when you're talking about like, you know, the time again, it's not about I gotchas. It's not about like, oh, surprise, you didn't know this was going to be a trick and I've hidden something from you, but it's more about people aren't playing with Slaanesh very much.
Hard to
So
visualize.
it's hard to work out. But when you go against these meta armies, when you go up against Soul Black Gravelords, you know what to expect. You know what they're going to do.
Yes. Yep.
You know, it's very easy. Like, right, everyone talks about Lumineth. You know, looking for the Cathalar, you're looking for the Archers, you're looking for the Fox. With this, you're right. It's hard to pull down. So. And I'm sure this list will evolve over time as the meta sorts itself out, battle packs change, new.
There's only one way this army can go, right? Like, it can only get better. Like, if it gets worse, then I mean, you know, I don't know what else they could do to it other than just removing things from the actual army. So
yeah. But, you know, I think your only way is up. So my advice, and I think what I'm hearing from you, Evan, is it's not all doom and gloom. Yes. It's definitely not a 5-0. Don't pick this up thinking that, you know, you're about to go win a GT. And if you do it, it's because of your experience or your luck.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of luck and definitely knowing your opponent's army better. But that goes for anything, right? You just have to know your opponent's army and what they do. But yeah, it was never in a gotcha moment. It was always, I explained to them what my army did, but there's so many little caveat like things that the army does that you can really trip up. You only have to make your opponent make one major mistake to capitalize on it.
I think the other point as well is because you're so fast, you can really take advantage of what I'm seeing right now is armies are taking, because of this hero hammer kind of build, and people are putting more points in monster heroes, you're finding there are less bodies on the table. And there are, because of coherency in the way that you've now got to be closer to, you know, models in the unit, they're not spreading out. They're not zigzagging as much as they used to. So there's more space for you to either use reserves, to summon, or to even just move around with your really high speed and really kind of take the table. And I think that plays in your strengths. But as we said at the top of the show, this is beating your opponent with a scalpel with very specific and targeted cuts. Yes. Because if you don't do it correctly, you can get punished back because you don't have the durability.
Yeah. If you're going against, like, as far as advice goes, if you go against like an Archaon or a any of those god type models, a Teclis, Marathi, this army is not meant to tool against those. I mean, you could throw Glutos at some of those and just like have them sit there all game, but you lose more than they do by sitting in combat for that entire time. It's much more of a dance where you're trying to pick a target, go into, and much like a Deepkin player. I think a lot of people that play Deepkin will find this army very attractive because there's a lot to going into it, picking a target, killing that target, moving on to the next, and being tanky enough that if something gets caught, that next turn you can retreat out and then hope that you get the roll off or do whatever you need to, or even use it as a hey, I'm going to sacrifice those 5 Painbringers and keep them in combat for a round or two while everything else goes and kills the stuff that they really need to keep alive. And so that's something that I would recommend to a lot of people is you have to not just smash into an Archaon with Glutos. And because even in going back to that Tzeentch Archaon list I fought, everything was dead by turn 2. It was crazy. He had 60 pink cores gone. All his heroes were gone. He only had Archaon and the Lord of the Chaos Sorcerer Lord on foot. That was it. If he hadn't got Slayer Kings off every single time against all my heroes, he would have been done. So it was one of those things where it was lucky on his part. But I never swung in a single attack into Archaon because it's not worth it.
No, and that's been a key lesson is when you see things like, even Nagash, I remember, Nagash can go supercharge and go get a whole bunch of arcane bolts on him. And, he's a lot of points. If you go kill out those skeletons, those zombies, those blood knights, there's only one body kind of claiming objectives. And again, against the key, right? This is an objective-based game. It's about denying your opponent their battle tactics. Scoring and holding objectives isn't nearly as important as it was in the second edition. Absolutely. Yes, you get victory points for holding an objective and 2 and more. But if you're on a battle plan with, say, 6 objectives, as long as you hold more and you're in removing objectives in turn 3 with the Teutonic Shift, like having a couple of objectives is normally enough. It's about denying your opponent those battle tactics and scoring yours.
In most of the battle plans, and I think that was a huge part too, is I had played a lot of 3.0 games where my opponents had maybe only played one or two. You only need one more objective than your opponent in most cases to score the maximum number of points. And if you deny them one battle tactic, they're playing catch up for the rest of the game. And that's why Gargants are so good right now, because a lot of theirs is based off monsters. But a lot of people are bringing monsters that they never thought, hey, I really should play more conservatively with this unit. They usually run it up into the middle, kill something like, oh hey, I killed all this stuff. One was the Maw Crusher. He ran up, killed a bunch of my stuff. I was like, dang, didn't get any points off of it. I killed his Maw Crusher, I got an extra point, and now he's playing behind for the rest of the game. And he lost. I mean, losing a Maw Crusher has always been bad, but he got all the points turn one, but then he couldn't hold the points for the rest of the game. Now, in 2.0, it was very worth doing that, because then I'd be playing catch up the rest of the game. But I only had to do one thing on turn two, and then for the rest of the game, he's like, yeah, we're done.
Durable monster heroes, I'm finding, are incredibly valuable. Especially, even things like, and I think one of the real benefits for Chaos is you have access to some really cheap heroes. As you already mentioned, the Cockatrice being like under 100 points.
It's the 75 or something like that.
The kitty cat, the Mind Stealer Sphinx or Sphyrax, whatever it is, like that's under 100 points, and that's got some really good. I think it's got like a fight last mechanic, and it has some interesting gazes. So if you are finding you're struggling with the victory points, and obviously summoning on keepers and things aren't going to get you those bonuses, you could have that Cockatrice. And a Cockatrice is a great monster to. Is it Lurid Haze units that get set up in reserve? Well, so your Cockatrice could be a reserve as well, right?
I don't think so. Let me.
So that's all right. Don't worry about it. Okay. If it can, the Cockatrice being set up into Deep Strike and using its range attack to do mortals could be a really good option. But if not, like again, it's 100 points, scoring new battle tactics. Have two monsters, Metamorphosis. There's your third. You can score out aggressive expansion. So
it just says Lurid Haze Invaders host units, so probably not. It doesn't say Slaanesh.
There you go. Final question. I might ever bring it home. And Harry, this is probably a really nice one. Harry mentions, is there any other Chaos factions that you'd recommend that synergizes well with Slaanesh? So we've already talked about, obviously. Not allowed. Not allowed.
I think one thing too, if you're trying to mitigate the problem with Slaanesh right now, is their stuff on average is not really getting anything from the allegiance abilities. They almost do better if you ally them into another faction. It's kind of silly to say that, but I think that Tzeentch is a good partner with Slaanesh. I don't think it's worth bringing Pink Horrors into Slaanesh, but I do think that there's a lot of units that you can bring Slaanesh into Tzeentch to kind of cover some of their bases. Especially like I think Sinessa's a good one. I think she's great in allying into either Slaves to Darkness, Tzeentch, or the aforementioned
the Legion of the First Prince.
Yeah, because she's demon, she has all the spell lores, and she can issue a command. It just says issue a command ability map wide. She flies. She's a monster. Like she hits all those check marks for what you're looking for, and she's a sub commander. So she hits all those check marks. I think she's like a really good combination tool outside of the game, and technically Dexcessa can do it too. All her stuff that she gets outside of Exploding Sixes is on her War Scroll. So those two, the newborns, are really good. And can compensate for a lot in Tzeentch, because Tzeentch has a lot of fast-moving flying units and with a lot of chaff. Well, Dexcessa would be perfect if you surround her with like a unit of Pink Horrors, and then just make sure, because she has a 3-inch range on one of her attacks. Well, just make sure she's in combat with something, and that something can't fight her, and then she's able to attack it, and now she's able to get the attacks for the rest of the game. So there's
you did mention at the top of the show, just in case you forget, you talk about the Changeling being potentially a good option to be brought into your army.
Yeah, he's pretty good because especially like with all the deep striking you're doing, I think that a big thing that it takes I haven't reached that level of experience yet, but I think if you're a really good player against the right list, and I'm saying like not a magic heavy list, but any list that has a movement of like 8 movement or less, even let's say like against Gargants, you pick something, you do the half move, half run, half charge from Sigvald. You put shackles out there, you put the mirrors out there so that they're getting hit every time, and then you drop down the changeling 3 inches away from an enemy. They not only can that next turn, if you get the double turn, cast the spells of any enemy wizards with a 9, but they also pick something and now they I think have their movement. So you're having the movement, the shackles are doing it. They can't just leave that changeling there. So it's worth the point cost to just kill it. I mean, even if they do kill it, and if they don't for whatever reason and only wound it, well then you got a depravity out of it. So it's a lot of just slowing the army down, and they're getting hit every single time they move with the thing, or they have to try to get rid of all your spells. And so there's a lot of potential with like the Changeling or even some of the other casters that are available to Tzeentch. So.
All right, literally last questions. This is a really good one. And I know one of my friends has been playing around with this combination in Slaanesh, and that is the Mega Gargant ally, or the mercenary. So, and I know some people that I know personally have been trying it because that Mega Gargant is a 35 wound depravity pincushion. It only counts as 5 to an objective as a mercenary. Right. It doesn't bring in the Sun's rule of counting as 10 or more. But it is like 500 points, give or take, depending on the Mega Gargant.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I never really thought about it. Because I think realistically, you could, like, even if you were looking at my list, you could drop the Keeper, drop the Painbringers, like one of the 4 Painbringers, and then bring him on and bring the Endless spell of your choosing. And you got a pretty solid list there, because now Sigvald's still doing his thing. He's still going to probably kill whatever he charges into and be a distraction. Now you got Glutos providing that -1 to hit aura with the Mega Gargant that's also going. And the big thing that I think the list, well, it's basically the War Stomper Mega Gargant.
It is the War Stomper. I was stalling trying to remember which one you had access to. Death has the Gatebreaker. Order has the Kraken Eater. Chaos has the War Stomper. So it's a little bit slower than the others. It can pick out models and break coherency. It has a shooting. It's not as good as the Kraken Eater's one, but it is pretty decent.
Well, you only need to pick out one to make the difference.
And you can pull out unit champions, which is probably the big part. But yeah, your 35 wound Mega Gargant. What are your final thoughts on that? Maybe in Slaanesh,
I think it's a good play. I mean, I think that especially if you have it with Glutos and you're just kind of running up the map, because the list, I will say, my list does suffer from horde armies. I haven't really come across any of significance, but if you do come across them, and I think once orcs get their update, like the new battle tome, I think you're going to see a lot of horde armies coming out and playing the field, and there's really no answer to them that Slaanesh has, because all their stuff is meant to be precise scalpel type precision. So if you're getting swamped, well, you're just going to die from 1,000 cuts, no matter what save you are. So I think I might have to look into that. I think that's actually pretty decent.
And the War Stomper gets benefits by attacking hordes, funnily enough.
Exactly.
So it actually gets some bonuses.
It makes up for some of the weaknesses of the list, and gets that -1 to hit aura within Gluto. So I think that actually has some pretty good play now that I think about it.
Yeah, no, I know one of my friends has been testing it, and I know it's been a bit hit and miss, because you are investing 400 70 points, I think it is. So, you know.
Oh, well, that's even better. It's only 50 points more than... Technically, I could just drop the keeper and add this, and I wouldn't change anything. So.
Actually, I think you would just scrape in, like, just looking at the points, and I'm not math hammering. I think it's 470 right now, so I'm pretty sure you drop a keeper. You've got 45 points there at the moment. Yeah. No, I think your list is 995. So you're sweet. But cool. This has been awesome, man. Is there anything you kind of want to wrap up with about Slaanesh, or do you want to kind of bring us home with maybe any shout outs?
Yeah, well, I'm going to shout out my boys, the Harambe's at back home, and Texas Masters, of course. Like, as you showed earlier, we got our own podcast. I hope you don't mind me.
No, please. And if people want to listen to Evan's journey at the Warhammer Open, you did a very detailed video on YouTube. So Harambe's Heroes podcast. Yep. I will edit this show link later so you can find the link. But on Google, you can find it. Not Google, on YouTube, you can find it. 2 hours of solid goodness talking about each of the rounds and what you learnt.
Yes, and please feel free, if you're even in the United States in general, or want to just follow up with the Texas Master Circuit, because we're doing 4 major tournaments from 4 major cities, and we're going. We rank us all on a giant leaderboard. There's over 130, 150 of us easily, and we travel all across the country. So it's super huge how we're getting into it. And I think especially talking to a lot of the people in Orlando that don't have access to that local scene, anything that we can help make our community better, even across the ocean and stuff, I think that's huge. That's super successful. So,
well, the irony of all of this is when I reached out so you're the 4th person now I think I've interviewed from the crew. And when I was reaching out to all of you, I had no idea that you were a part of these crew.
Yeah,
I was
just some guy
I was looking for people who I was looking for some people who performed well that could help me, have a conversation around early 3rd edition. And I found Gavin to talk cities, yourself obviously with Slaanesh, Zach talked Nurgle, and I had someone else, I'm pretty sure. Kyle? Kyle reached out and told me that you guys aren't potatoes. But anyway, the point is that independently I reached out. You're all fantastic, and it just kind of shows the great community that you've got. You're thriving. You've got the Warhammer Citadel. You've got Texas Barbecue. Yes. You've got a really good scene. I would at minimum recommend go check out the YouTube channel. So Harambe's Heroes podcast.
That's right.
And if you can get to go to Texas, you go to check out an event. I certainly have it on my bucket list, and that's me being brutally honest. That's being honest. That's
come join us.
I would love to. Been to Texas once. I'd love to come back. Cool. I learned that Texas barbecue, the best of it, is in the morning to lunch. I thought it'd be a dinner thing. I thought,
they close by lunch, man. They're not open past lunch.
I learned that. Like, we were having breakfast at this like little thing, and my wife's like, "This place opens at 10 o'clock." I'm like, "Lol, who gets Texas barbecue at 10 o'clock?" And there's a massive line. And it ended up being that day, because I was only in Texas for a few days, I had Texas barbecue twice in one day. And I'm pretty sure I got meat sweats. Pretty sure. A lot of meat.
I have to order my barbecue like a week in advance and for the place I go to. But yeah, no, and we talked about it too. We're going to come down there and show you guys how to play Age of Sigmar. That's going to be fun when you guys open back up, of course.
Yeah, let out of my house.
Thank you again for having me.
No, thank you to everyone who's watched the show, who's been jumping into the chat. And if people want to learn more Texas Masters, go check them out. Go check out the podcast. I'll link all the stuff and all the good things. But hopefully Slaanesh players, you feeling a bit more comfortable and confident on your army. And like any good YouTuber would possibly say at this particular point, if you are playing Slaanesh and you have some ideas that how your list is playing, or maybe you disagree with some of the things that Evan has said, put it down in the comment section. Let me know. No, seriously, let me know. No, but let me know. Are you finding value in Shalaxi? Are you finding that Painbringers aren't giving you the value, and maybe 30 Demonettes are better than the 10? Maybe that's one build. People aren't double downing on Demonettes, and maybe it's better to go Horde as opposed to these little 10s. Let me know. I'm genuinely curious.
We all help each other out. That's what makes.
And
us
we all learn and we try things. And hey, Evan's just got some new ideas about how to get Mega Gargant. So we're all sharing ideas. That's how we learn and we grow and we get awesome. But Evan, thank you so much. I'm going to go make some lunch. My wife's had a COVID shot literally like two hours ago. So I want to see if she's even awake or if she's passed out. But I don't know. Second shot, who knows? Who knows what kind of wife I've got? Maybe the 5G in my house is better now with my new Windows 11.
All right. Good luck, man. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to do the wrap-up show. And thanks, everyone. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so links down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.